Welcome back to the sweatshop today, folks. We are working on this glorious day too damn hard. And unfortunately, it is on a car that no one should ever have the pleasure of working on. It is on a GMC Savana 4.8 liter. There's a number of repairs that need to be done on this vehicle. We'll be knocking them off one by one. Today, in this video, we're going to be showing you how to do the water pump. First things first, in order to get to the water pump, we've got to remove most of the crap in this area. It looks daunting, but it's really not that bad. Essentially, you've got to remove the intake box here with the air filter and the snorkel tube. We've also got to remove this coolant overflow tank. Okay, so you're looking at the fan shroud now. Next thing to do is to get this stupid thing out of the way. Now you can see there are 3 bolts. 1, 2, and 3. You get those guys out and you take the 2 up top on the radiator support out. That guy right there, you can see him, and yank it out. Don't forget to unclip this little wire here. With this guy here, you're just going to lift it out of the way. There's also another wire here. This one, it's kind of hard to see from the angle that I got because I'm an amateur, bro. Fuck. What do you want from my life? The way I take the fan shroud out is by not touching this. It will make your life a lot easier if you could take these out. The problem is I live in the Rust Belt of North America. So if you touch these, usually it's not going to end well. These ones in particular aren't, they don't look so bad, but just another headache I'm not looking to have. So what I do is I'll move this guy back, get him out of the way. You get that positive cable out of the way. You can usually stick this one up here a bit. Just be careful, don't want to bend the hose too much. Once you do that, you can pick this end up on that fan shroud. To get that end up, be sure to miss the hose. Once you get the bottom portion of that fan shroud out past the hose, you can pull the fan shroud out to the driver's side of the vehicle and then just wiggle it out. It's as simple as that. The next step is to get that fan off. So what I usually do is take an enormous adjustable wrench like this and smash it on the bottom, on the end there, to get that thing to break loose. In case you're wondering, with this particular vehicle, it is the conventional way. It is lefty loosey, righty tighty. That's it. And then you just pull it out like so. And there you go, friends. Now comes the next fun part, which is draining the coolant. Okay, so to this point, we have removed the belt and the tensioner. Do yourself a favor. If you're forgetful, definitely trace a diagram of what the belt looked like on the vehicle before you remove it, because you don't want to try finding the correct diagram online. We've also removed the tensioner, which sits up in the corner here on the water pump. It's 3 15mm fasteners. It's also a 15mm fastener that you have to grip onto in order to take the belt off. This here is the tensioner. Now, if you watched my belts and pulleys video, you'll realize that when you hear this, it's a bad day waiting to happen. So what we're going to do is replace this tensioner as well as this guy here. That idler pulley is also trying to sing us a song, and it's not a very good song that anybody will care for or like. So do yourself a favor, check the remaining pulleys as well as on the idlers or tensioners on your vehicle when you have the belt off. don't put them back on and be sorry. To this point here, we have taken off the upper radiator hose. Now, they've got those wonderful clamps. The ones that spring back, bust your fingers, and then make you cry like a little girl. This clamp here, they're a real pain in the ass to get off. So what I suggest using, and what I usually use, is a vice grip. Best thing known to man. The other thing is, those rubber hoses like to weld themselves on to these fittings. Now, what works is really well is you take this pick end here. Come on, focus. You take the pick end and then you just gently get in there and maneuver it around where that rubber hose sits. And that's it. Pull it off. You'll have to do the same for the two heater hoses. And now you can see the thermostat down there. With regards to the thermostat over here, don't bother taking this C-clamp off, or this clamp off. What you're going to do is simply take those two 10 millimeters off. We're going to be replacing this thermostat just because we're there, and the gasket. Pull those two hoses off. Don't rip them with the pick if you employ that method. Take your time and just wiggle them off nice and slowly. Get yourself a really big wide bucket. Stick it underneath the vehicle so you can catch most of that crap, because you don't want it on your floor. And if you're doing this in your driveway, be responsible. Do not throw the coolant down the drain like an idiot. You can take it to your local parts store and generally they will dispose of it without giving you a headache. So when you get to this point and you're done contemplating why you started this job to begin with, you're going to now get to these 10 millimeter bolts here and here. There's another one that's hidden around here. There's another one here, here, and here. You pull those guys out and your water pump will fall out into your hands. And you'll feel some sense of accomplishment. And then you'll realize that you have to put this piece of crap back together again, and a tear will roll down your eye. Now, let's go ahead and get that water pump off. Now, I've left it in the shot, but I'm going to be pulling this off. So don't leave it there because it will get into your way. It just makes it a bit harder to get the water pump out. Okay, let's do it. So we're back at it early this morning. It's currently 11 a.m. and this thing is still dripping. Now, the next task, as you see, we've pulled the water pump off. So the next task is to clean the mating surface for the water pump. The best tool to do that is a scraper. Basically, you're just going to get this gasket material here, the orange stuff, off of the block of the motor. So you can put the new water pump and gasket on a fresh mating surface so there's no crud to cause a leak for you. Now it's a bit hard to see on camera here, but there is a little bit of a raised edge. Now if you don't get the gasket in exactly the right place, you're obviously going to have a leak. So to deal with this raised edge, what we can do, and what we're going to do, is use a cookie, which is basically a grinding disc. That'll smooth out all that rust around this area here, and then it'll make a nice flat mating surface. Now, when you think you've got it all, just wipe it down to make sure that you've got as much as possible. You can see there's still a bit more. So go over it until you get it nice, smooth, and crap free. And then you can go ahead, wipe it nice and dry and clean, and prep it to put your new water pump on. So you can see here we've gone ahead and cleaned up all the crud and crap off of the mating surface that we can. The little rust that's around the timing cover, I'm not really concerned about because it doesn't meet or touch the mating surface. What we have done is taken a rag, sprayed it with brake clean, and then wiped off the mating surface so we know it's nice and clean. Okay, so to this point we have put silicone on the back of the water pump. We have cleaned up the bolts here. And now what we're going to do is take the gasket and put it on the water pump itself with the bolts run through. The reason why we're doing this is specifically because it is a pain in the ass to get the bolts to go through these gaskets while it's on the car. So this will make your life quite a bit easier if you do it this way. Now, all we have to do is put this thing into place. Do not push the water pump right up against the block. It's much easier to see where the bolt is headed if you hold it away from the block. Now once you thread it in a little bit, you'll know, if you get it on both sides, you'll know that you're lined up somewhat. So you can work on threading in the rest of the bolts. You may have to play the water pump up and down a bit just to get it into the right position. And once you do that, you take your handy dandy impact driver and just run them up slowly. Nice and easily, just like that. You want to go down equally on either side. That should be my hit the subscribe button bell thingamabobber. So there you have it. Now next step is torque these bolts down to the specific torque for your application. For this specific application on this 4.8, we've got to do the torque in 2 steps. First step is 11 foot-pounds. I don't know the sequence because I didn't look it up. What I like to do as a rule of thumb is go from one side to the next in a crisscross motion. That tends to be the best. You can look up the sequence if you like. I'm not going to. .22 was the final step in this case. Now, go ahead and recheck them. That's it, friends. Your water pump is now installed. Now, all you gotta do is put your hoses back, your heater core hoses. Good rule of thumb here, spray a little bit of WD-40 on this as well as this, and in the hose, and then put them on. Now, do them one by one, and do the back one first, so you can get that stupid clamp on. You fucking pile of shit. There you have it. Next step is to deal with this guy here. We're going to yank it out and clean up the mating surface here. We're still going to apply a little bit of silicone. You can see that green crud and crap in here. Not a good sign. What I find works best with this is a flathead screwdriver, a small one, a pocket size, or a pick. This guy here, there's nothing wrong with it, but we're not going to take apart half the motor again just to change it if and when it does fail. So, be proactive and replace it with a good part. Not a used one, a brand new one. Be a mechanic, they said. It would be fun, they said. They'd make all kinds of money. I tell you, boys and girls, they fucking lied. So, this is what you should end up with. Something that's relatively clean and crud free. If you can't get the crud off of yours, or yours has degraded to the point where it is basically trash, You can replace this flange. I'm pretty sure they sell the replacement flange online or at your local parts store. So you can do that. That is an option. Next thing to do would be to install the thermostat. Now, with regards to the thermostat, after you've cleaned the surface with brake clean and on a rag, you're going to line this gasket up here like this and shove it in. You can see there's a little nipple there. You want that in this little cutaway towards the top. You do not want your thermostat to go in any other way. The reason being is there's a small little brass portion here. And what this does is it allows the air to get through the system so you can bleed it more efficiently. If you put it the other way around, you're gonna wreck things. Now, apply some silicone to the back end of this here, and you are good to go. Now, they have supplied us with new bolts in the water pump box, but we're gonna use the old ones because they're in better shape. You can see the silicone's on there. What you want to do is move your bottom shroud out of the way. Carefully, you want to do this because you don't want your thermostat to fall out onto the floor. And then once you get it in there, thread your bolts in like so, and then torque them appropriately for your application. For my application, it is 11 foot-pounds. So what I like to do, same thing, as you get it tighter and tighter, just make sure that you go to the other end and cinch it down with as equal pressure as you can. And then double check. Now the next step for us is unrelated to the water pump. We're replacing this tensioner for the AC, this guy here. And we're also replacing the air conditioning belt because it was horrible. Now, as you can tell, this piece, which goes in the middle of the tensioner here, was completely rusted. So what we did was ground it down on our wire wheel, get rid of all that crud. Now we're going to put a light layer of anti-seize on it, a really light layer. You don't want to gob it on. The reason being is anti-seize or grease, if you choose, can act in a different way where it basically holds the crud and dirt and will potentially ruin your new tensioner a lot quicker. So don't glob it on, just enough so it doesn't rot. You can see how it spreads around there. Do that a few more times or add a little bit more, you'll be good to go. Now I put some WD-40 down on the tensioner, on the shaft of the bolt, and we're ready to put this guy in. So to put the pulley on, it was much easier to do it from the underside of the car. Trying to do it from the top side, well, you've got to be Stretch Armstrong essentially. It's not easy to get down there. Putting the belt on, unfortunately, with this setup, I'm not sure if it's a custom setup or whatnot, because unfortunately the parts that I originally ordered did not work. It's not for this particular application. So we ended up having to get the parts and look around quite a bit for them, which was nice and fun. Luckily we got them and it's all in and back together, but it was a bit of a challenge to get this. Generally, most of the vehicles that I've worked on, all of the GM LSs in these types of vans that I've worked on have always had the automatic tensioner. So, well, if you got to work on something like this, basically you just want to make sure there's not too much deflection and it's not super rigid when you tension the belt, because if it is super rigid, you'll end up wearing out the belt and killing the tensioner and possibly the bearing on the compressor. So once you get it together, you tension it and you think there's enough deflection, which generally is, I would say for this length, about a half inch of a deflection should be fine. That sort of tension is okay for me. You tighten up the big nut. I think it's a 23 millimeters what I used, and then to tension it, oddly enough, is a 12 millimeter fastener on the top right there. So that's it. That's that job complete. So the next step is now to put the tensioner and idler back. Next step here, we're going to replace this idler. It's really easy. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Pull it off. And now if you can't pull it off, what I do is just take one of the bolts here from the tensioner itself, thread it in a bit. Percussion instrument. Just hammer it, and there you go. Now, pull that bolt out. And there you go. Put your new one on. Well, you know what? Before we put the new one on, probably clean that crud off. That looks better there. See? Now all we gotta do, put this guy on, zap our bolt back, and that's it, man. We're done. Put it on the car. Now we've got the idler and the tensioner back on with their new pulleys. Looks beautiful. Ready to go. The next step here is to put the belt back on. Now, if you listened to my advice earlier, you'll have a nice diagram to follow, so you're not confused as to where the belt goes. Luckily for me, my memory still works, and I was able to route the belt in the correct fashion. Now all you got to do, take your 15 millimeter wrench and socket combination and twist it over like so, so you can get the belt on. Just like that. And then that's it. Let off of her. Next step, put your fan on. Now what you're going to do is gently place it on the water pump and rotate as evenly as you can. This can take a while. Sometimes it's a real pain in the ass, and other times it's nice and easy, smooth sailing, but you don't want to screw this up, because if you do, you'll end up having to take the stupid water pump off again. That's no fun. Now once you get it on, you just thread it on like this. It should go on easy. There should be no biting or clamping or any sort of stopping. Now, once you get it on all the way, okay, oh god damn it, we're almost there. Okay, once you get it on all the way, you'll feel a little bit more resistance from the fan. What you're going to do is get that enormous adjustable wrench, stick it over this guy here, like so, tighten it up a bit, and then just give it a couple of whacks, and that's it. You are good to go with the fan. Next step, you're going to put that shroud on. Now before you put the shroud on, make sure you clean the bolts up and anti-seize them so that they don't, break off on you if you ever have to service this thing again. When you are putting the shroud on, make sure you don't forget to get this thing out of the way and get your upper rad hose out of the way. Alright, so next step is to get this hose on. Now, we've got a tool for that. This is said tool. Now I picked this thing up in the Snap-on truck. You can get it anywhere else, realistically. That's not gonna hurt so much when you pay for it. All you gotta do is slip this over one end of the clamp like so, and over the other end of the clamp like so, and then you pull the plier portion like that. And obviously it clamps it in place. So now all you got to do is just push it on, squeeze it, pull the trigger, and you're done. Now put your coolant overflow tank back and your air box. Don't forget to put your wires back. Once you've got these in place, now you're ready to start putting your coolant back. Also, don't forget to tighten up the air snorkel tube, and you are good to go. Okay, so using a funnel, you can pour your radiator fluid in to the rad, I have a jug of concentrate here that we're going to be using. Essentially, you want to get the appropriate coolant for this thing. This is applicable for deck school or vehicles that use that type of radiator fluid. All you got to do is start pouring it in. Now, to make your life easier, it would be quite a bit easier if you just get the 50-50 mix, because then you can pour until it's actually full. If you do get the concentrate, you're going to have to figure out what a 50-50 mix is. Essentially, because of the size of this motor, I'm going to be pouring in this complete bottle, and then we're going to fill it up with water, pour it in, and then we will adjust with our second bottle. Now, as you're pouring it, what you can do to help yourself is just squeeze the upper rad hose, and that'll sometimes help with the airlock. Essentially, it'll move the air through the system towards the top of the radiator. Essentially, you got to do this process until you fill it up. It's really exciting. You're going to love it. Now, what I suggest to help the process along is to start the vehicle for maybe 2 to 3 seconds or 5 seconds, whatever. Let it run. It'll suck the coolant down into the engine block and circulate it a bit. Also, turn the heater all the way to the hot position. That way you know when the coolant has hit your heater core. So to this point, we filled it up with coolant as much as we can. I have started the vehicle and ran it for about, I'd say, 4 or 5 minutes. The temperature came up to about 90 degrees, and obviously there's not enough coolant in it. The reason being is because the heater core is not hot yet. It doesn't have any heat inside the vehicle. That's a good indication that you're running low on fluid. So this particular vehicle is a bit of a pain in the ass to run. I do suggest hooking it up to a scanner so you can monitor the temperature as it increases. You don't want to overheat it. I wouldn't run this thing anything past 100 degrees just because it's too hot. So it's going to continue to bubble out and lose fluid like this, and you have to just consistently top it up. Eventually you're going to get to that point where it is nice and full. You'll know that it's full when you get heat inside and this thing's not sucking down what seems to be like a bucket of fluid. So just keep going. We're going to start this thing back up now and get it to heat up a bit more. So I just fired it back up, and you can see it keeps taking more and more fluid. The other thing is that the temperature is way down to 76. So a big fluctuation like that means that the fluid's making its way into the system slowly. So you can hear it sucking the water in. The reason why I revved it up is what will happen is sometimes the water pump will push the water into the heater core. It is something that will eventually get there, but it gets there a lot quicker if you rev it up. So this is basically the process. Just keep doing this until your vehicle is thoroughly bled. And then the following morning, you'll check this guy here to see if it is at this plane here. It's basically a indicator bar so you can actually see where the fluid is. If you can't see it, sometimes you can shine the light through the top, and if you can't see anything like that, well, there's probably no fluid in there, so add some. So we're going to continue this process until she's nice and bled, and then we will take her for a test drive. Just before we take her for a test drive, we will inspect it underneath just to make sure there is no leaks, period. Then we'll have to do a cycle with the cap on. Essentially what that means is I will heat cycle the vehicle. So I will wait till this vehicle gets to about 50 degrees and under in terms of temperature on the engine. I'll put the cap on and then get it up to operating temperature, and that for sure you'll know that there's no leaks because the system will be pressurized. Okay folks, good luck out there. We will see you in the next one. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and share this video. Thank you.